students in the panel knows, as always, we're live on YouTube now on the M3 YouTube channel. And these are all recorded there too, if people want to go back and look at them, but we're also live on the channel right now. I want to welcome everybody to our semi-annual board panel presentation. What we started doing 5 years ago, or probably 4 years ago, was we have two board meetings, advisory board meetings a year, one in October and one in April. And I scheduled those meetings to be on the same day that this speakers class meets. And so what we do is have board members form a panel with a moderator and to be able to kind of field questions together. And it's really a fascinating thing, as you'll see in a moment. We made a big change this time. Elliot Faucione, who's our moderator and our senior board member, we made some changes this time. The big change was to be able to engage more with the panelists. And the way we're going to do that is we have only 6 panelists, and one I think probably can't make it. I don't see Michael Klauber here, so I don't know what's going on. But to be able to engage more fully with the panelists, because when we made it optional if they wanted to do the morning meeting with the students. We made it optional, and sometimes we'd have 10, sometimes we have 15, and it gets unwieldy. So what we're doing is we're doing 6 at a time, at a different 6 every semester. So everybody will have a chance to be on the panel from the board. And somebody said to me a couple of years ago, we were sitting at the panel, and faculty come to, and of course students said, there's more years of experience and energy and wisdom in this room than you'd see very often collected in one spot. So that's a good thing. Just so the panel members know, the students research people who are coming to speak. And so Julie, you've already been researched this semester because you spoke already. And Virginia has too. And Gil was going to, but no, they did. They've been with Gil. So Ernie spoke 2 semesters ago. So we had them research Ernie this time and get some questions ready for Ernie. And Rob, he and I, it was my fault. We had a little miscommunication, and I didn't realize he actually could make it today. So I'm glad he is. And the other person that they researched today was Michael Klauber, but I don't see him. So we have some questions from students, and what I would recommend is that once Elliot takes over, that he'll handle whether students should ask questions while it's going on, and Elliot will explain that to you. And you can do it by clicking, or just either raising your hand, physically, or clicking the yellow hand to go up. And but he has copies of your questions. I sent them to him this morning. But it'd be better if you asked him yourself. Students, we're not going to do group A and B this week. It's anybody who wants to ask a question can. And so that'll be fine. We'll run out of time. There's no doubt about it. And so we're good. All right. So we're on from now until 10:45. And I'll remind everybody as we're getting to the end. I just want to introduce our panelists. And panelists, because we're all in different spots on our screens. So I'm going to go by my screen. So Gil Reyes, would you raise your hand, Gil? Yeah. So Gil Reyes is the GM of the Westin Hotel here in Sarasota, Manatee. And they're all on our board. So, and he's been just a wonderful speaker. Next is Dr. Ernie Boger. Ernie, there's Dr. Boger. Dr. Boger and I have been colleagues now for 45 years. And in our hospitality professors organization, and Ernie has been a dean at two at least historically Black universities, Maryland Eastern Shore and Bethune-Cookman, and he was an industry star as well. Ernie is the first Black USF graduate, and he was a music minor. And Ernie's quite a dancer too. He and my wife danced on our honeymoon. It was really cool. Julie Corlew. Julie Corlew is vice president of Mainsail Hotels. She's vice president of operations. She runs a joint. and she's a partner too. And they have, and Julie was a speaker this semester, so the students are familiar with Julie. But Julie is critical to that company's operation, and that company does many different things. So it's pretty fascinating. Elliot Faucione, I'll introduce more in a second. Rob Grimes, and Rob and I also have known each other, oh gosh, since before I married Rosalie, Rob. So that's been 35 years or so. And Rob has he's a technology guru. He has his own technology information company, for lack of a better way to put it, and advisory. And he's worked for big hotel companies. He's got it together. And Rob joined our board a year and a half ago. I twisted his arm, and he's here. Virginia Haley, and you all were with Virginia earlier this semester. Virginia Haley is the executive director of Visit Sarasota County, which is Sarasota County's tourism development group, basically, only a different model. And let's see, did I miss any board members? No, I think I got everybody else. All right, Elliot, I am going to. Oh, I think Elliot's got a call. You okay now, Elliot? Okay, so Elliot Faucione is the executive director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau and of the Tourism Development Commission for Bradenton and for Manatee County. Elliot is one of our senior board members, been a staunch supporter for many, many years. And Elliot is really good at moderating this panel and challenging people to think and to engage with each other. So Elliot, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Everybody, don't mind Anastasia, a USF grad,
okay.
Hospitality grad. I think she had Professor Jihan in her class. So Jihan, you did a great job. Anastasia is a superstar. Welcome everybody. If 1 second, please. Sorry about that. This is an exciting opportunity for the students because you have the pleasure, the opportunity to listen to these very successful entrepreneurs, very successful executives, very successful educators. Not many students around the globe get this kind of opportunity. And there's an adage when you go to an event, a conference, a meeting, that if you can learn one thing from an event that you can take away from and apply, then it was worth your time. So please keep that in mind as you listen into the questions and some of the answers for the panel. The panel attendees have become so popular that actually Dr. Pat had to limit the amount of participants on the panel because we have so many executives and entrepreneurs that want to speak to the students. We felt like if we had 15 people that we're trying to accommodate, it's really not going to be as seamless as the 6 that you're looking at. So we'll rotate them in and out. Panelists, thank you for being here and having to answer to my questions. I'll keep them a lot of fun and hopefully pretty accurate for everybody. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into it since Dr. Pat made the introduction already. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to call them by their first name because we're going to look at this as a little informal. So if that's okay, as they all know, I have the utmost respect for them. So Ernie, you've been an educator for so many years and just been in front of so many students. I'm curious, can you compare and contrast the hospitality student 20 years ago compared to the contemporary student that we're educating today? I would assume there's a difference in the student from 20 years to today.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the technology more than anything else. It's the technology. And where they obtain information from. 20 years ago, we were more reliant on textbooks and class lectures and that sort of thing. Today, students seem to feel like they can Google everything, you know? And so I would say there's less of an appreciation for the depth of knowledge that exists out there as opposed to that would be the number one thing. Beyond that, I don't see a great bit of difference. You know, I talk about going back to the Bible when there was no room in the inn. That means there must have been inns. And so our profession goes back a long ways. As a result, the basic importance of being a hospitality professional has not changed. And so I see the same hospitality attitude in the successful students that has always been there.
Ernie, let me take it another level. We talk about the importance of personality traits in society. Do you see a difference in personality traits from 20 years ago to today in the students?
I would say today they are more aggressive, more assertive. They're just coming with so much more knowledge and awareness of so many more options. That's the big thing. But once again, you know, we kind of decry the idea of there being people persons, people saying I'm a people person. However, there are some very specific characteristics that are universal and that continue over the decades. So I would put it that way.
Great, thank you, sir. Gil, you manage a really big property in downtown Sarasota. We know that there is a need for hospitality employees, not only in the region, but across the country for a lot of reasons. You've been an executive in the hotel world for many, many years. Are you seeing a difference in employees, students coming right out of college, their personality skills, their social skills, compared to when you started years ago?
Well, I had to do the math actually right before I spoke that it's been in the business now for 23 years, and I started at 15, believe it or not. And the difference I think now to Dr. Ernie, what he was mentioning is that I think the students now are more assertive and more willing in a sense of wanting to move up quicker than we did before, where it's kind of like back, I would have even 10, 12 years ago, you would like to go and work your way up and learn as much, whereas now it's that instant gratification that I think our students now would want. They want to learn quickly, and they want to be a part of something and be supportive in a sense of they want to learn as much as they can, but then they want to move on to something else within that same, whether it's in the same hotel or within the company. So I think we're seeing that happen a lot. And I also believe that technology-wise, it's probably one of the smartest, if not the to date, the smartest generation that we've ever had electronically, technology-wise. Every person that we brought in here has made improvements, has assisted us in making improvements operationally, whether it's, maybe utilizing an app a certain way, maybe utilizing a search engine a certain way, whether it's recruiting or whether it's guest satisfaction, et cetera. So I think there's differences in the sense of the eagerness that they want to learn. I also noticed the fact that a lot of our new students want to be mentored. They want somebody to mentor them and be able to tell them, good or bad, how they're doing. If they're doing well, they want to know about it. If they're doing bad, they want to know about it. Sometimes they may not take the constructive criticism well, but at the end of the day, I think that they want that feedback in order for them to develop into future leaders in our industry.
Thanks, Gil. And I'm going to go to one more, and then we're going to shift gears. But Julie, you do a great job, Vice President with Mainsail. Could you articulate to the students, if you were to get the perfect entry level employee right out of school, what would that employee look like?
Oh, that's a great question, Elliot, because we are looking for new talent and new members of our team as we're in a very rapid growth period. So I think that the profile of the perfect new person coming out of college to us is somebody who really wants to do take any approach or any position that will help them learn more about the day-to-day operations in the field. So it may be in marketing, it may be in the front desk, it may be in culinary, but somebody who just has this is like a sponge and just wants to learn, wants to take advantage of the opportunity, and then to prove themselves. So coming in and saying, you know, whatever job it is, I know that I'm here for a purpose. I'm going to learn everything that I can possibly learn, and then look to the next position. It is difficult, as Gil indicated, that you know, when people start, they're always looking for the next job, but they have to really be able to sparkle in the current job, whatever job they have. It may be a server job. If they have that sparkling personality, they'll get noticed, and their managers will want to help them develop and help them move up. And I just wanted to go back. I've been in the business for a very long time as well, and I started back in the 1980s, and the hospitality industry was growing very, very rapidly at that time, and in a fashion similar to how it is right now. And I remember as I got out, I worked at the front desk, and then I was promoted into management after I finished my college education. But I was looking to move and to be promoted every 18 months. And it's something that I have to remind myself, is that we as employers in the hospitality industry, we need to provide that avenue for our team to be able to grow and develop and to be able to move on, and recognizing that, you know, as an employer, I may want 2 or 3 years from somebody before we're moving them, but the employees and the teams are really looking to move very quickly. And so we just have to recognize that and provide those opportunities for them to develop and grow.
Thanks so much, Julie. Let me shift to my partner in crime of the South, Virginia Haley. And it's great to see you, Virginia. Virginia is one of the, has probably one of the higher tenures as an executive managing a destination marketing organization in the state of Florida. And Virginia, you and I have seen a lot of adversarial occurrences in our careers, in our communities. Can you describe to the students what your organization, what role you play during an adversarial situation, whether it's red tide, a hurricane coming in, oil crisis, etc.?
You start listing them, Elliot, and you start to wonder why we're not doing something other than what we're doing. We are very good at crisis management. And I think one of the reasons why our area has come out of these various crises better than many others is that we rely on research and really understanding what our customers thinking, what they're worried about. Oftentimes when you're going through a crisis, you know, like a red tide, it's always worse for you where it's happening. And so you think the whole world is focusing on it, and they may be focusing on it for a couple of days, and then the next world crisis happens. So really understanding how it's playing in your consumers' minds, what questions do they have, and then being very transparent with your visitors. If you have got a problem in your destination, you have to make sure you're sharing information, accurate, up-to-date information with your visitors and with your customers. Again, there's a great example of the year we had the 4 hurricanes. And they happened, 3 of them, I think, hit one of the destinations on the east coast of Florida. And they started welcoming people back and saying the beach is beautiful. It's just as you imagined. And visitors arrived to hotels that 3/4 of the building was still shut down. There was still debris on the beach. And they've never really recovered from that. So you have to use that consumer research, and you really have to be transparent.
Virginia, you mentioned crisis management plan. You've been an accredited destination marketing organization for years. Why is being accredited important to your hospitality industry, to your community, and your organization itself?
Well, and congratulations on the long history of accreditation for your organization as well, Elliot. And the students will remember that was a very important thing for the college, for USF, was going through that accreditation. And so anytime you have that opportunity within your industry to look at the highest standards for your industry and then strive to meet those standards is very important. So for us, it's really looking at, do you have all the components in place to make sure you've got, it isn't really looking at how great your marketing looks, your advertising, your digital campaign. It's the fact that you are disciplined and structured in the way you approach it. And having a crisis plan in place, because when the crisis hits, you do not have time to start thinking about how do I react to this. You have to have those systems in place, and you have to train to them. You can't create a crisis plan and put it on the shelf. You can't create a strategic plan that maps out your future and then say, oh, good, we're done with it. You really need to work from them. You need to train to them.
Thanks, Virginia. I think getting that accreditation is like attaining master's, maybe even a doctorate. It's very extensive. The binders are like this thick, and then you have to get reaccredited every so many years. But it's an incredible accomplishment to get that. I think, Virginia, there's only about 1,200 destination marketing organizations globally that have that accreditation. So it's pretty neat.
It sure is.
Yep. Mr. Grimes, good morning. Shift gears here again. If I'm selling cars at a car dealership, I sure better know everything about that car, from the wheels to the brakes to the engines to the technology. You sell technology first and foremost, software. How important is it for you and your sales staff to have intimate knowledge of the products that you're selling?
Well, that's a really tough question to answer since I don't sell any technology. So we are a services company. So I run 4 organizations, and one is a not-for-profit industry trade association that actually has an arrangement with the Florida Lodging and Restaurant Association called the IFBTA. But everything that I do, in fact, does not sell any products at all in any way, shape, or form. We have a consulting company that selects systems and does all kinds of things. We have a deployment group that white label, nobody knows who they are, deploys PMS and point of sale and back office and stuff. We have an event management group that actually runs the conferences for the Florida show, the New York show, the California show, and we have a specialty in technology across the board. So that's number one. So what I would tell you is I'm going to change your question a little bit, because we work with a lot of people who are looking at different technologies, and I'm a firm believer of packaged, not custom, and our industry should focus on operations. So I'm a restaurant manager who happens to be in technology, to be very clear about that. So I don't believe that technology ever comes first. It enables almost everything, and so People need to know what they're doing before they do it. And my recommendations, if somebody were looking, or a salesperson were trying to sell, would be to really document what it is that you want to do before you start going looking, because everybody just does Google searches for stuff and brings people in to do demos, and that's not the way to do it. But by doing that, you're able to compare apples to apples in what it is you're selecting out there. And I also believe that people need to holistically look at technology in their organization, not in silos. And I'm going to just give you a real example on that right now because of the pandemic. Restaurant companies got held up. I am answering your questions. So restaurant companies got held up because they were unprepared. The large chains had online ordering, may not have done delivery if you were on the higher end, but the smaller groups may not have even had online and certainly didn't do delivery. And so an example is, so the pandemic hits, and what do? In a silo, you sit there and say, I have to put in online ordering and delivery today. And they selected stuff. They had to survive. But they didn't think holistically of how does that impact other things. So now they're scrambling as they come out of this of, well, the online ordering system doesn't connect to my point of sale, doesn't do my inventory, and these problems exist. Hotels do exactly the same thing. Today they focus on needing something specific for a guest. Some CEO said, oh, this would be really cool if we do this, and they choose it without looking at the big picture of how everything actually has to connect. And so my advice to anybody is, if I were a salesperson selling a system, I would say, do not go in there and sell the system like that. You've got to understand the complete environment, how this is going to fit into it to make sure that it's going to work. Long-winded answer to a short question.
Thanks, Rob. I really, really appreciate it. Ernie, this kind of comes from one of the students, and I think I'm going to challenge you to say the student basically asks, what is more important, education or experience? I think that you may say both without putting words in your mouth. But if you had to pick one, let's just say you have an 18-year-old that's saying, do I go to school right away, or do I get some experience and then pick up some classes? How would you mentor an 18-year-old on what's more important out of the gate?
Well, like you said, I would normally say both. However, if I had to make a choice, it would definitely be the education. And that's because hospitality education has a healthy hands-on component anyway. All of our good programs, have apprenticeship and weekly dinners and things like that they do. So if I had to make a choice between the two, it would definitely be education, no question about it.
Would you say that once the student receives their undergrad and has the mindset they want to go after their master's, but they need a job, would you say that a hardworking hospitality employee could do both, or no?
I would say yes. That's kind of what I did. I mean, the hospitality industry, by and large, does not put a premium on master's degrees at the very beginning. It's later on, as you move up and need to make strategic and marketing decisions, that you really need a master's. So my recommendation is always get a job with a good company, start moving up the ladder. And for the master's, start doing it part-time. It took me 5 years to do my master's while working full-time as a general manager of properties in Texas. And so it worked well for me. At the end of 5 years, I had 5 years experience in operations, and I had a master's degree. I had both. It took me longer, but I had both. So that's the way I'd recommend people still do it today. I don't see much change in that.
Well, and I would say it's safe to say that if you're outperforming most of your colleagues while maintaining humility, that employer may help you pay for your master's degree while you're working for them, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely, no question about it.
And that's the best of both worlds.
Uncle Sam paid for me, so that's another route. I don't know if that's optional today, but I go back to the Vietnam era. So Uncle Sam actually, paid for my master's while I was, working full time. So I kind of had two paychecks coming there.
That's awesome. Julie, Mainsail, correct me if I'm wrong, is an independent brand.
Yes. and
Okay.
no.
So the independent brand, there's benefits, and are there challenges when managing an independent brand property?
So the majority of our hotels actually are operated by Mainsail as franchisees of Marriott. So most of our hotels do have a flag, which we like to operate under the Autograph Collection brand, part of Marriott, and as well as Tribute Portfolio hotels. We do have a couple of independent properties. So we have a couple of independent properties, but the majority of them are under the lifestyle flags with Marriott. We enjoy that that division of hotels because we feel like it's the best of both worlds. We have the independence to be creative and to create the experiences that each hotel is unique, and we're able to create unique experiences for our guests. But we also have the marketing engine that is so incredibly valuable from a major company like Marriott. So when we do have our independent hotels, they are specific to a destination where the destination itself is creating the demand, and we rely less upon a marketing engine like Marriott. So for example, in Anna Maria Island, we have the Waterline Resort, which is an Autograph Collection property, but we also have an independent property right on the beach, which is Mainsail Beach Inn. And Mainsail Beach Inn does not need the strength of Marriott to be able to attract guests. It's the destination, it's the location, it's the size, it's only 12 units. And so it's really not necessary to have a brand.
Can you articulate, you got a business model that's changing out at Waterline Mainsail to sell individual rooms fee simple. Can you articulate to the students why that happens sometimes when, I know the Ritz-Carlton has some fee simple units on their top floors, and that was a way to get the Ritz-Carlton built years ago in Sarasota. But what was the idea of selling some of those units fee simple related to the Mainsail product?
That's a great example, Elliot. Thank you. The Waterline property was opened about 4 years ago, and it was opened as a part of Autograph Collection. The product itself is a bit unique in that they are 2-bedroom suites, and that they're really 3 bays. So you have a bedroom and bathroom, beautiful size on each side, and then in the middle is a living room, eating area, and a full kitchen, so full-size kitchen. And beautiful units. So they are, because of the restrictions in Holmes Beach, we are required to rent those as 2-bedroom suites. So the product itself is very popular, but it became, we felt like it really needed to be considered more of a condo product, because that's really and truly what it is. But it does very well in terms of the rentals through Marriott. We decided to do a condo conversion because we wanted to extinguish our debt on the property. So a way to do that, either you do that when you're building the hotel, or you can do it as a conversion, is to go ahead and sell the units so that individual owners are owning them, so that you take the funds the proceeds from the real estate sales and you pay down the mortgage. So at the end of the day, we'll have no debt on it. We'll have funds to distribute to the investors, and it continues to operate as a regular hotel. So from the individual guest's perspective, they see no difference. The Marriott piece of it still continues on, and it's operated, and it will continue to be operated as an Autograph Collection hotel, but the debt is completely extinguished, and so everybody seems to win from that. It's a perfect product to sell as a real estate because of the product itself is beautiful, and they're full 2 bedrooms and the full kitchen. So that for us seems to be a real good fit. condo hotels are definitely making a new cycle comeback. And we saw this happen maybe a dozen years ago. And I have 4 different projects that I'm working on right now that are all condo hotels, either in the vacation rental field or in the hotel operating market.
Awesome. Thanks, Jolie. Gil, a lot of hotels are looking for directors of sales, all over the place. I think that sometimes from a hospitality student level, they're not quite sure what a sales director or a salesperson in a hotel really does. You are in an area that has a lot of rooms, in a dense area. Number one, how do you diversify your offering in the marketplace, and what role does the director of sales have in that?
Great question. Overall, the director of sales plays an integral part in our success here at this hotel. For us, we have about 25,000 square feet of meeting space, indoor and outdoor. So having and being in a leisure market, we need to have somebody that also can basically, in essence, cut the hotel in half, or put a base type of business into the hotel, so then we can capitalize on the leisure and retail segments. So, for example, my director of sales, she's responsible of focusing on not just corporate, but also large group business, professional teams that stay with us. And for us, it's been extremely important with our success that she layers in that business, not just for the year, but for future years as well. And I got to tell you that when the pandemic hit, a lot of our competitors cut our sales teams in half, or totally, completely. And for me, it was just something that I knew we were in a really tough times with the pandemic, but cutting your sales team completely, I felt that it was a bad move in some sense, because of the fact that you're not booking for future on future business, right? So for us, we are having we are having the best year in the history of this hotel, because we were able to continue to book business while others, guests would be calling our competitors and they're not answering the phone. There's nobody there. The GM's answering the phone at the front desk while he's checking people in. Our directors of sales, we kept our director of sales and we kept 2 group sales managers employed during the pandemic. And because of that, we are seeing the benefits of that right now. We're ahead of the game in group. 22 looks fantastic because we've already layered in that business. And even 23 looks healthy as well, because of the fact that we were able to shift business from other hotels that, quite frankly, didn't have a sales team employed. So I truly believe that having a director of sales that is ambitious but understands the dynamics of the market is extremely important in making your hotel successful.
Gil, what is your ratio leisure to group in a normal year at that Westin, would you say, percentage-wise?
Aspirationally, we would like to be 70-30, 70% transient, 30% group. Currently, right now, we're at 80-20 because of the fact is that a lot of people can't meet, and we've had to cut our capacity down in our ballroom from, like, for example, our ballroom holds about 400 people. We right now, per Marriott guidelines, we want to the capacity is half of that. So our group number with regards to banquets and catering is slightly off to prior years, but our group rooms are up primarily due to the fact that we've got a lot of leisure groups coming in, sports, soccer, professional teams, things of that nature. They're still meeting.
Damien's a really good guy next door. Any kind of cooperation, pushing each other, referrals that doesn't fit, any kind of partnership there, Gil, or do you guys pretty much stay autonomous from each other?
No, Damien and I have a very good relationship. We talk a lot. We talk about recruiting. We talk about potential groups that, quite frankly, may be an overflow from his hotel to ours in order for it to fit here. So when we're competing with other destinations, and they're looking at Sarasota, it's extremely important that Damien and I work together because of the fact that he has meeting space, but they may need a little bit more. They may need overflow rooms and vice versa. We do that constantly, and him and I meet on a consistent basis. We talk a lot about just in life, and Damien has been a great mentor for me coming from California, just to get to know the area and let me know how Sarasota is and what to expect and how to handle certain situations, and then vice versa. He's just been a great person to just work with. But overall, we have to work together, because if not, then it's just long-term wise, we're not going to be, especially on the group side, it's just not going to work. The referrals with overflow, referrals for future business, maybe he sold out and he says, hey, Gil, I've got a potential piece of business that I can't take. Do you mind taking it? And this is what their expectations are, et cetera. And it works out. When we're oversold, or when he's oversold, we'll call each other and say, look, instead of charging me $600 a night, can you charge me $200 because I gotta walk 4 or 5 people to your hotel? Absolutely, and vice versa.
But I'm going to close at this, but it's safe to say that cooperation is powerful because your brands are aligned and your customer service is integrated, which gives each other confidence to push business back and forth. Make sense?
That's correct. That is
and if I could
correct.
interrupt Elliot for just 1 second, because the students may not be aware. I think most of you know this. Damien wasn't in this semester as a speaker, but Elliot is referring to Damien O'Riordan, who is the general manager of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And for those of you who maybe haven't driven downtown in Sarasota, the Ritz-Carlton and the Westin, of course, are both Marriott products, belong broadly, but they share a driveway, and they really are contiguous to each other. So that's the reason Elliot asked that question.
Thanks, Pat. I missed that name of Ritz-Carlton. Apologize for that. Rob, you articulated to the students, what you're doing in your career right now. I know a lot of students soul search while they're in college, trying to figure out what their best skill set is, where they can apply it to a future career. What would you tell the students that your most powerful skill set that you have that brought you to where you're at today in your career?
Well, so, who knew I was going to end up in technology when I left school, right? I mean, because it really didn't exist as a career for people out of hospitality programs when I left. It just didn't exist. And for that matter, certain positions didn't exist either at the time that are now very popular, like revenue manager or going to work for, Expedia or whoever. They just didn't exist. So I would say that the 2 things that have worked really well for me have been networking from the very start. One of my first positions was actually as a Bob's Big Boy restaurant manager, not very glamorous, but working for Marriott. And I actually, they didn't give an assistant restaurant manager a business card.
I a large coffee.
Yep. I think Joe's entering my Starbucks, buying a coffee. So, so the first thing I did when I was there, and I'm talking about like my first job, right, is I made myself business cards that said, I'm sure it was illegal at the time, but it said Marriott on it and restaurant manager, assistant restaurant manager. And, but I did that because I wanted to go to the New York Hotel Restaurant Show. And I wanted to go to Penn State reception there. And I always made myself business cards because people would ask. And that's actually how I got my job out of restaurants into Marriott hotels. And from Marriott hotels, because of networking, I ended up in the systems department of Marriott. And at a very opportune time, because I was the first person who came from operations in the systems department. And then I started my own company, a number of years after that. But all I can tell you is that if it wasn't for that networking and showing up and being out there, now today it's a lot easier because of LinkedIn to do it, and I do have I mentor a lot of students in different things, and I do have my theory on how to actually be focused and get the job you want, which is a whole different discussion. But I do it. Networking has been everything. out there. And then focused and targeted networking is what makes the difference. But I would not be in technology today if I hadn't been networking and used certain Penn State things and certain other things to be where I'm at. I mean, I can point specifically to them when they happen.
Great, thanks, Rob. Virginia, I get this question asked a lot in my daily life, and you've been with Visit Sarasota for many, many years. What would you say is your most common challenge you face year in and year out? Is there something that just sticks out that is a yearly challenge for you?
Well, I think, we have we're similar to a lot of destination management organizations in that the majority of our funding comes from the tourist development tax, which is generated by the 5% tax on every lodging stay in Sarasota County. That is then overseen by the local county government. So county commissioners ultimately decide how those funds are allocated and what they're used for. And I've just found over the years, you wind up with local officials who think hotels just fill themselves. People, we live in Sarasota, we love Sarasota, so the rest of the world must love Sarasota. And they don't understand the competitive nature of the tourism business. They don't understand how hard we all have to work to attract a sporting event to town. They just think it's great. There's rowing at Nathan Benderson Park. How marvelous. They don't understand that one event may have taken 5 years of hard work and a good chunk of our budget for it to happen. So getting them to really understand that we matter for a certain percentage of the visitors who get to Sarasota would not come but for the communication that we have out on the marketplace. And again, working with our hotel sales teams, they're so important. And Gil was so right. And those, especially as we started to get inquiries from meetings, one of our biggest challenges was even finding a salesperson who is still at the hotel. And yes, we finally tracked down general managers who were at the front desk. So, but overall, I think making sure that the local community and the elected officials really understand the serious nature of what we provide for the local economy and the need to keep some consistent funding in place.
Great, thanks, Virginia. Dr. Ernie, first and foremost, thank you for serving our country to help us maintain our freedom. A student had asked what it was like being an officer during the Vietnam era. Can you articulate a little bit what life was like back then?
Sure. I suppose it depended upon what your assignment was during that time. In my case, I was trained as an infantry officer, and the mission of the infantry is to kill or capture. That's kind of cold, but that's what it is, kill or capture. However, at that time, they just installed computerization, McNamara. And so I think the computers whirred and clicked and says, well, wait a minute, here's a guy that we've spent 6 months training to go out and kill or capture, but he has a degree in psychology. He has a year and a half working in the New York bank. And he has a degree in psychology. So let's make him a personnel psychologist. And so instead of going to the front to lead troops in the combat, I was transferred to Dallas, Texas as a personnel psychologist and chief test control officer. So and I was drafted, so I did what my country asked. So for about 3 years, I was responsible for the mental testing of all men coming in, and then primary men. There were men at that time in the draft, coming into to be processed for induction in the state of Texas. And so that was the main part of my duty. On the other hand, as far as combat's concerned, I was responsible for survivor assistance, which means I was responsible for handling the affairs of families whose loved ones had been killed in combat. Okay, and I guess that came from my psychology background, so on and so forth. And so from an interesting standpoint, I also was responsible for inducting, for actually swearing in troops before they went off for training. I always feared that I would actually, and I'd have families there who were excited about their person going in. I was always concerned that I'd have to bury someone that I swore in. That never happened, and so that was a good thing. Another aspect from a cultural standpoint is that as you probably, as the statistics show, there were more African American or Black troops in combat percentage-wise for the population that actually were killed. And so when the casualties came back into Dallas, where I was primarily stationed, my commander said, "Well, you know, we have a roster for this sort of thing, but I feel like people are more comfortable with their own at this time. So would you have any objection to handling all of the Black troop deaths that came?" I said, "Nope, not a problem whatsoever." So as a result, I handled probably 90% of all the casualties coming back in. And military-wise, when that happens, you actually are sort of expected to replace the man in the family. And so you have to be sure that all the benefits are in place, the funeral ceremonies, and the whole business. And so I feel like I did that as well as anyone could. And while I did not, go into combat and have to, put my own life at risk, so to speak, I believe my contribution was significant in terms of that whole effort that some would call misguided. I'll leave it at that.
Well, Dr. Ernie, the students were digging into your background, and one of them asked what influenced you to minor in the Russian language.
Oh, that's real easy, real easy. In 1963, I think Sputnik went up. Those who don't know about Sputnik students, you can go Google it. But somewhere around that time, the Russians put up the first satellite, and everybody was concerned about the Russians. And so, as probably now, as part of your general studies, you have to have a language. At least we did then. And so I selected Russian because it was there, and because it was what seemed to be needed at the time. I've always been that way. I've always been an opportunist in the sense that I've always felt it important to take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of me. Very few schools had Russian at the time. The University of South Florida had it. And so I said, that's for me. Started just to fulfill my 6 hours of language requirements, or 3 hours or whatever it was. As I continued, but then you had to have a certain amount of electives as you do now. So I just stayed with the Russian. Before you knew it, I had 18 hours or whatever it takes to have the Russian minor. And what is even more interesting, because in psychology I took extra education courses, I think I'm 1 credit short of having an official Russian teaching minor for the state of Florida. I can't do it now, but I mean, it's back there. So something I can fall back on, if I have to, when I retire again or something. Thank you.
Dr. Pat, we need to sign off on that 1 credit to get Ernie that degree. This is going to be a little rapid fire. We're starting to wind down here. Gil, stress is prominent in society today. Sometimes things happen quickly. If I say control the controllables, what would your comments be to students about that thought? Control the controllables.
Wow. You can control what you can control, I guess. And for us, and for me, I look at it as, this business has been very resilient. It's interesting because I was in your shoes. So I didn't have a Zoom. We didn't have Zoom back then. And trust me, I'm not that much older than you guys, but when I was going to school, I went through something called 9/11. and 9/11 hit, and it was probably one of the most devastating things that could happen to our industry, because pretty much everything shut down. Airlines, the whole everything, hotels, restaurants, you name it. And at that time, I think that moment made me into a better hotelier and understand, to your point, that control what you can control. At the end of the day, you still have to deliver great service. You still have to have a great smile and take care of our guests and take care of your team members. That's the biggest thing. And for me is that if you take care of your team, you take care of that, everything else is going to work out. And when the coronavirus occurred and the pandemic occurred, we sat back and said, okay, what can we do to make sure that we're going to be successful in the time being, but also down the road? So for me, it was more of making sure that my team had everything that they needed, resources, et cetera. Making sure that our staff have the things that they can to be successful, arming them with the tools that they need to be successful in sales or the front desk, housekeeping, food and beverage, and then everything else will fall into play. There was a lot of unknowns, and for us, it was just what can we control right now, and that is taking care of our team, which in essence is going to take care of our guests. So,
Right.
sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, I this is rapid fire, so I'm making you all step up a little bit further. Julie, I'm gonna hit you with one now, similar to that, because of anxiety and stress in society, and technology plays a part of it. Do you agree with the adage that 95% of what we worry about never comes to fruition? What would your comment as a mentor to these students if somebody says that?
Well, I think we actually did see something that we had been concerned about, but we thought it could never possibly be that long of a drawn out pandemic. So we actually did have it happen. So I think my advice is to be as nimble as you can and be able to pivot when the circumstances change. None of us knew what was really going to happen, how long it was going to last, what things we would be going through, even in our wildest imaginations. So we had to be able to deal with what was on our plate today, think about what's going to be coming or what we know is going to happen in the very near future, and have some back of mind expectations about, okay, if X happens, then we're going to do Y. If Z happens, we're going to go in the opposite direction. But just being prepared to be as nimble as possible is what I think helps all of us get through a very difficult year last year.
Thanks, Jolie. Virginia, you speak publicly a lot. I do. You and I are blessed to speak to elected officials a lot. Is there any particular way that you prepare for a presentation that you may want to share with the students?
Thanks, Elliot. I think one of the things I like to do is to prepare and really understand who my audience is. I think on Monday this week, I spoke to the Sarasota Garden Club at their annual event. Well, they're really not interested in a lot of the nitty gritty of understanding what Visit Sarasota does. But we know that there are some common areas that those ladies had with us. So really understanding what part of the industry is going to meet that need. Today at lunch, I'm speaking to a lot of people who are in the journalism industry in their careers. So again, understanding who the audience is. So we're going to be talking about the different ways in tourism that we work with media and travel writers and influencers today, as opposed to what they knew from broadcast journalism of the 50s and 60s. So understanding that audience and then delivering insights that are relevant to that audience.
Thanks, Virginia. I'm going to tie Rob and the question to both Rob and Ernie. I'm going to start with Rob. There are born leaders, and are there leaders that could, if an 18-year-old wants to be a leader but doesn't have that God-given leadership ability they're born with, can they mold themselves into a leader? And if so, how?
So I'm sort of interested in Ernie's answer to that question. There are people who are born entrepreneurs. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're born leaders, okay? Because they have great ideas, they just may not know how to manage or execute. And then there are great leaders who are, know how to manage and execute, and but may not be the visionaries, that are out there. It doesn't have to be entrepreneurial; it can be in any organization. The one thing I can tell you is that if you want to explore it, you should always be willing to do some stretch things or follow up on ideas and be able to clearly put your ideas down, and then figure out how to get there, which starts to put in place the process of whether you're a leader, the visionary, whatever it is that you're going to do. And then the other thing is, no matter where you are, it doesn't really matter. Having really great mentors or contacts actually really helps a lot. Somebody who's doing what you want to do or what you think you want to do, who can share that experience directly. And that's why being selective and being a little bit more focused than a lot of people are when they come right out of school becomes, and for your whole life, really becomes important.
Thanks, Rob. Dr. Ernie, you want to talk about leadership?
Sure. Well, as we all know, there are some naturally born leaders that just have it. From kids, there were some that we just followed. Could be good or bad, but there are certainly some natural born leaders in the human species, and probably others. On the other hand, leadership has been distilled ad infinitum so that there are PhDs in leadership, which means that if you really want to be a leader, you can study the whole process and make yourself into a leader. So both can work. If you have it naturally, that's great. When people who have it naturally study it, they usually say, "Oh yeah, I get that. Well, that's what I've been doing." They find a realization in the study of it. If you are not a naturally born leader, as you study it, you can become it. So both work.
Dr. Ernie, I'm gonna ask you one more question. I can listen to you all day. You're so articulate and soft-spoken, and I'm gonna be very sincere here. You're looking at a guy named Elliot that, as of today, I believe I have not lived up to my God-giving abilities yet. And when you have a student coming out of school and trying to attain a job, and they think that way, are there any suggestions as an educator to get the student focused on striving and live up to their God-giving ability?
That's a difficult one there, in the sense that students don't always know what their God-given abilities are. And I don't have any specific formula for that, except to be flexible and to look for opportunities. It is said, and I found it to be true, that you really only interview for one job in your life. That's the first one, okay? And once you get that, you simply perform, and opportunities will present themselves. The only company I know that really embraces that is Disney. You talk to Disney people, and they cannot tell you, if you start at Disney, there's no clear path. In most other companies, there's a path that you can see where you're going to go up over the years. Disney, there is no path. You just simply have to do well. And one day someone will say, "You know what? I've been observing you there in that position, and we'd like to offer you the position of." Talk to the Disney people, and they will explain that. So I say that the best that you can do is to get that first job, keep your eyes open, remain flexible, and you should be able to take it from there. I don't advocate that you take any self-awareness. I mean, there's self-awareness, self-help kinds of courses and stuff to help you, so to speak, discover who you are and what you want to be. I'm not too much of an advocate of that sort of thing. If it works, works for you, fine. But you know, Dale Carnegie's How to Influence and Influence People. Read that and go from there.
Thank you, Dr. Ernie. Dr. Pat, where we're going to go from here is I'm going to offer out to any of the students, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And then I just want to have about a 2-minute closing thoughts, and then I'll turn it back over to Dr. Pat. Any questions from the students to any of the panelists at this point?
So go ahead, either group is fine.
Got to have at least one. Give me one.
And Aaliyah, I can see you want to talk.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I know. So I learned a lot. I guess it's more of a comment, just from those last aspects about leadership, because I think sometimes as young students, there's this breakdown in college of students that have been in, some that have been in industry and some that never have. So I think it's really interesting, just to hear that within leadership growth, you know, you've kind of find your path. So I guess that's what we're all on as we're going through graduation soon. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. I think it's important. I'm an old baseball scout by trade, and you know, I have to figure out how to judge talent. But then when I look at in the mirror at myself, I need to understand the talent that I have, the skill sets that I have, what I do good, and what I need to polish. And I think if you focus on that, don't get too obsessed with it, but if you focus on it from time to time, then I think you have a better shot of hitting your ceiling in regards to growth. It's really, really important, because we all get caught up in technology and social media, and then we forget to focus on the really important things. And before you know it, you lost 5 years, and then you become me and say, gosh, if I was 20 to 26 again, and realize all the things that I should have done, could I be a lot further today at this point in my career? Like I said, without getting obsessed with it. All right, make sense? Any other comment?
And I have one comment.
Yes, sir.
Another thing is that I think that we should all be aware as well, and I really want you guys to understand this. It's great to have the skill set, and part of the leadership part, I think that you can be successful, is having the emotional intelligence, right? I think we constantly talk about the IQ and understanding, you know, your statistics and understanding guest services and things of that nature. But I can tell you this right now, that if you have a low EQ, so to say, things are not going to go well for you, especially in this industry, which really just, it's about feelings. It's about understanding someone's emotions, not just the guests, but also your team members as well. So I truly believe that understanding where you stand on your emotional intelligence side, I think it's going to go a long way. Take it from a guy who was, in essence, I was a robot. I was a cyborg in a sense. That's what my boss used to call me, because that's all I wanted to do. Work. Didn't care about anybody else's feelings. I just felt I understood the systems. I understand the standards, and we did well, but I didn't understand the other part of life. And I think once that was brought to my attention, I had a 360-degree feedback, which is kind of your colleagues telling you you're good and you're bad that you do in life and do at work. And then I ended up getting married and having children. And I think that also improved my emotional intelligence, understanding why people go through the things they do. And it's really made me, I feel, it's made me into a better leader and manager, because now I can understand the whole thing on a bigger picture. So hopefully that makes sense.
Great comments, Gil. Thank you for that. Any other comments?
Yeah,
Rob?
if we're not going to have time for this, but first of all, anybody on this call or anybody on the board, you probably should have already connected on LinkedIn, and I didn't see if I have any invitations yet, but you ought to do that. But we're all good resources. I actually have a focus chart, which we won't have time to do today, that I use to sort of figure out what I'm focused on, because you can't do everything. The biggest complaint I have with students when I talk to them and I start mentoring them, or the biggest challenge is I say, what do you want to do? And Ernie, I don't know if it was you, somebody said early on this thing, you know, I want to help people. Well, okay. You know, I want to work with people used to be, you know, what it is. So students, you can't do everything. And if you really want to find the right job, or at least, excuse me, I love that thing about the only job you interview is the first one. I love that. I'm going to remember that. But the first job is the opportunity to open up something, and you're never going to end up where you think you started, because I wouldn't be in tech. So I just highly recommend that you give some focus to what you're thinking about. You know, I want to work in hospitality. Well, okay, do you want to work in lodging? You want to work in food and beverage? Do you want to work for a supplier or convention and visitors bureau? And just at least narrow it down a little bit. And then when you say, I want to work in lodging, okay, great. So my next question would be, well, what does that mean? It could be anything, but it could be housekeeping or something, marketing, whatever. And once you narrow it down, you don't have to know, you're not going to know exactly the answer here, but at least it's the first step. Then you go do that LinkedIn profile search, and you sit there and you go search, you know, lodging, marketing, resorts. And by the way, you put in the word vice president, because you need to find the contact who's the highest one. And then you go ahead and you put in USF, just for the hell of it. And boy, if all of a sudden you get somebody like Julie, who shows up with a vice president or higher title, she's in marketing, she's in lodging, whatever, you send them a note and you say, hey, I'm a current student. I'd like some mentoring here. You don't say I want a job. And what do you think the first thing she's going to ask you is? Can you send me your resume? Right? And she'll take a look at it, give you mentoring. And by the way, if she happens to pass it on to somebody in her organization, they're going to think that she knows you personally. Right? And so you just got away with getting around the Marriott read by computer resume and letter system. And so the only thing I can tell you is when you're graduating or you're thinking about that job or internship, at least put down on a piece of paper some sort of focus stuff here, because otherwise you're never going to find that thing. So
Thanks,
anyway.
Rob. Final thought, and then I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Pat. Daily focus. I'm a big believer of daily focus. Focus on being unselfish. Focus on humility every day, and focus on loving people. It is so important to focus on loving people. It's easier said than done. Love people that don't like you. Love people that hate you. Love people that you don't like. Okay? And if you can do that consistently, humility, unselfish mindset, and unconditional love, it will resonate and impact other people. And there is no doubt you will be a leader by far. I want to thank Dr. Pat and Dr. Jihan, Dr. Faison, and Dr. Joe. You have incredible professors, deans educating you. They will get you on the right path of future success. And it's just a blessing for me to be able to moderate this. I want to thank the panelists. And Rob is right. We are here for you all beyond this discussion. You'll have our contact information. And a lot of us want to hire students like you as soon as possible. So we are here for you in the long run. Feel free to seek us out. It's back to you, Dr. Pat. Thank you.
Well, Elliot, thank you so much. And thank you to the panelists for taking, time out of very busy schedules that you all have and letting yourself get more Zoom fatigued. Hopefully we'll be able to do this in person, although for some of our board members like Rob, who just can't make it down to every meeting, we'll still have a big screen that he can come in on. But so it's wonderful. It means all the world to us. Education is one thing, and it's made up not just of the classroom, but of our connection with industry. And that's really the important thing. That's really what it's all about. Next week, students, is our last week together, and I'll be your speaker next week. And hopefully we'll be able to I'll give you something to glow on, something to grow on, and something to go on next week as we talk. The two themes that I do want to talk about next week really surfaced in here today. One of them was networking. If you listen to what each of the panelists had to say, that was crucial. And you look at Rob Grimes and Julie, you heard Marriott as a common denominator there. Well, that isn't just an accident. When I was at Penn State, we were there. You know, Marriott was very important at Penn State because it's physically close and also mindset close. But a lot of the people I met, Rob worked for them for a long time, and Julie was with them. And so there's a cohort of Marriottism that then sort of follows people around, and that networking is important. I still meet people from my old company, PKF Consulting, that go around, from Howard Johnson's. Gil, same thing with Marriott. Ernie, Dr. Ernie Boger, networking in education as well as industry, really, really crucial. The other thing is I want to talk to you a little bit about next week is where you go from here academically. You heard Dr. Ernie talk about how he got his master's degree. I did the same thing. I was in the Vietnam era. I wasn't in country. I was in the Mediterranean, but I managed a hotel in Ithaca, New York, while I started getting my degree there. And I wouldn't recommend it to people a lot, but it was a way to get started. And so I would say that that's something to think about as you move forward. It's possible to do more than one thing at a time, and it just takes balance. So students, thank you. You're the reason we're here. You're what gives us encouragement for where we're heading in the future. I love the students in this class. You've been an inspiration to me this semester. So thank you all. Thanks for staying overtime. Elliot, when you send the bill, send it to Dr. Boger. He's retired and he can pay for it. Okay.
That sounds great. And I just saw Dr. Adam. Thanks for being on the.
Oh, there, yeah.
Well.
Good.
Dr. Adam, thanks for your support.
Okay.
Great professor.
Board members, we'll see you.